Sir, I need you to step aside.
Step aside for what? I'm just
Okay,
trying
you
to
don't
catch
look
my
right.
flight.
We need to check you.
What do you mean I don't look right? I haven't done anything.
We don't like the way you look. You're coming with us.
Hey. This isn't right.
In August 2002, Dr. Bob Rajkumar, a respected physician from Lake Worth, Florida, boarded a routine flight home. What should have been an ordinary trip turned into a 4-hour detention, handcuffs, and humiliation, all because federal air marshals didn't like the way he looked. Dr. Rajkumar isn't alone. The ACLU has documented countless cases of black women routinely targeted for hair pat-downs at airports, Muslim travelers forced off planes for wearing Arabic writing on their shirts, and Sikh passengers subjected to discriminatory turban searches. These aren't isolated incidents. They're part of a documented pattern of racial profiling by the Transportation Security Administration that has resulted in multiple federal lawsuits, millions in settlements, and ongoing civil rights violations. Before we dive into these shocking real cases, I need you to do something. Hit that subscribe button right now. These stories need to be told, and your support helps us bring accountability to those who abuse their power. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. On August 29th, 2002, Dr. Bob Rajkumar was on a flight where air marshals subdued an unruly passenger and held other passengers at gunpoint for 30 minutes. The situation was tense, chaotic, and frightening for everyone on board. When the plane landed at Philadelphia International Airport, Dr. Rajkumar was arrested and detained for 4 hours. He wasn't the unruly passenger. He hadn't threatened anyone. He hadn't done anything wrong. So why was he detained? TSA personnel told him that he had been detained because air marshals on board the flight did not like the way he looked. That's it. That was their justification. Not suspicious behavior. Not a security threat. Just his appearance. The agency's official explanation was that Dr. Rajkumar had been observing the actions of the air marshals too closely. Think about that for a moment. Armed federal agents were holding passengers at gunpoint on a plane, and when Dr. Rajkumar, like every other terrified passenger, watched what was happening, the air marshals decided he looked too interested. Dr. Rajkumar is a person of color, and in the post-9/11 atmosphere of airport security, that was enough to make him a suspect. The ACLU filed a federal lawsuit on Dr. Rajkumar's behalf in April 2003. The case exposed how racial profiling had become embedded in TSA operations, disguised as security procedures, the settlement that changed TSA forever. In 2005, the government reached an unprecedented settlement that would, for the first time ever, require an agency within the U.S. Department of Homeland Security to substantially alter its policies and training procedures. The settlement included substantial undisclosed compensation to Dr. Rajkumar and his wife Dorothy, and required a written apology to Dr. Rajkumar from Admiral James M. Loy, first administrator for the TSA. But the money and apology weren't the real victory. The settlement forced the TSA to implement new training protocols, anti-discrimination policies, and oversight mechanisms across the entire agency. Stephen Presser, the ACLU attorney who led the case, said it clearly. This was racial profiling at its worst. There is absolutely no legal or factual justification for why the air marshals treated Dr. Rajkumar the way they did. For years later, on August 12, 2006, another case would expose how little had actually changed. Ray Jarar, a U.S. resident and architect, was waiting to board a JetBlue flight from New York's JFK Airport to his home in Oakland, California. He was wearing a T-shirt. That's it, just a T-shirt. But the shirt had Arabic writing on it. The words, "We will not be silent," printed in both English and Arabic. Jarar was approached by 2 TSA officials. One of them told Jarar that he needed to remove his shirt because other passengers were not comfortable with the Arabic script, telling him that wearing a shirt with Arabic writing on it to an airport was like wearing a T-shirt at a bank stating, "I am a robber." Read that again. A TSA official compared Arabic language, spoken by 400 million people worldwide, to a robbery threat. Jarar asserted his First Amendment right to wear the shirt, but eventually relented to the pressure from the TSA officials and 2 JetBlue officials who surrounded Jarar in the gate area and made it clear to him that he would not be able to get on the plane until he covered up his shirt. terrified about what they would do to him. Jarar reluctantly covered up his shirt with a new T-shirt purchased for him by JetBlue. But even after complying, Jarar was allowed to board the plane only after JetBlue changed his seat from the front of the plane to the very back. Here's what makes this even more outrageous. The lawsuit later revealed that JetBlue and the TSA officials did not consider Jarar to be a security threat. They knew he wasn't dangerous. They admitted it, but they still forced him to cover his shirt and sit in the back of the plane. The $240,000 price tag for discrimination. The ACLU filed a federal civil rights lawsuit in August 2007. In 2009, TSA and JetBlue agreed to settle the case for $240,000. Aidan Fine, senior staff attorney with the ACLU, put it perfectly. This settlement should send a clear message to all TSA officials and airlines that they cannot discriminate against passengers based on their race or the ethnic content of their speech. While those cases made headlines, another form of TSA discrimination has been happening quietly at airports across America for years. Black women are routinely subjected to hair pat-downs at airports, targeted specifically because of how they wear their hair. On December 9, 2013, Dr. Malika Singleton, a neuroscientist, was subjected to a hair pat-down at Los Angeles International Airport after passing through the full-body scanner screening while traveling to London as a U.S. delegate to the G8 Dementia Summit. Think about that. She had already passed through the full-body scanner. The machine had cleared her, but TSA agents still grabbed her hair, styled in sister locks, and proceeded to squeeze it from top to bottom. Upon her return from London, her hair was again patted down at Minneapolis International Airport on December 16, 2013. Both times finding nothing, TSA allowed her to proceed. 2 airports, 2 screenings, 0 security threats found. So why the searches? When TSA agents were asked to provide a uniform reason to justify these searches, they were unable to articulate such a policy. There was no policy. There was no security justification. There was only bias, the assumption that black women's natural hair is somehow suspicious. Novella Coleman, staff attorney with the ACLU of Northern California, explained it clearly. The humiliating experience of countless black women who are routinely targeted for hair pat-downs because their hair is different is not only wrong, but also a great misuse of TSA agents' time and resources. The agreement and training requirements. The ACLU filed complaint, and the TSA eventually agreed to changes. The agreement stipulates that the agency will conduct trainings for TSA agents throughout the country, with special emphasis on hair pat-downs of black female travelers. TSA also committed to monitor all the airports the agency oversees for consistent implementation of TSA and DHS policies, and to detect the existence of a racially discriminatory impact. But the question remains, how many women were subjected to this humiliation before someone finally stood up and demanded accountability? Here's where it gets even more disturbing. The TSA has been operating a program called Screening Passengers by Observation Techniques, or SPOT, since 2007. The program trains thousands of behavior detection officers to watch travelers in airports and identify those showing signs of deception or malintent based on their behavior. Sounds reasonable, right? Except there's one massive problem. The social science literature in the TSA's files includes specific findings that behaviors people commonly associate with lying, gaze aversion, nervous or fidgety gestures, or placement of hands over mouth, are not reliable cues to deception. In other words, the TSA's own research shows the program doesn't work. But it gets worse. The TSA's secret list of indicators includes those very behaviors, along with others for which there is no empirical support. The ACLU obtained over 16,000 pages of TSA documents through a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit. What they found was damning. The TSA's documents revealed details of specific instances of racial or religious profiling by behavior detection officers in Newark, Chicago, Miami, and Honolulu. Those records highlight the ease with which behavioral indicators can be used as a pretext for harassing minorities and disfavored groups. Some officers flagged far more people than others. Here's a telling detail. The records show that some officers refer passengers for additional screening far more often than others, a troubling indication that the TSA's indicators are subjective and arbitrary. If the program was based on science, you'd expect consistency. But what you actually see is wild variation, suggesting that individual officers' biases, not objective criteria, are driving screening decisions. Passengers, as well as behavior detection officers themselves, have complained that this process results in unfair racial profiling. Even TSA's own employees admit the program is being used to profile people based on race and religion. Now let's talk about how discrimination doesn't stop when service members leave the military. In 2022, a lawsuit was filed accusing Veterans Affairs officials of racial discrimination in disability benefits processing. The lawsuit was filed on behalf of Vietnam War veteran Conley Monk Jr., but it represents potentially tens of thousands of black veterans who have been denied benefits at higher rates than white veterans. According to VA's internal research, from 2017 to 2023, black veterans had a higher acceptance rate for claims submitted within the first year, 85% to 83% for whites, but lower rate after that, 65% to 68% for whites. The Monk lawsuit cites VA documents that found between 2001 and 2020, the average denial rate for disability claims filed for black veterans was 29.5%, significantly above the 24.2% for white veterans. Research from the Government Accountability Office released last summer found that from 2010 to 2020, black veterans were less likely than any other racial group to have their claims accepted. Roughly 61% of black veterans saw those claims accepted, as opposed to 75% of white veterans. Think about what this means. Veterans who served their country, who risked their lives, who came home with service-connected disabilities, are being denied the benefits they earned at higher rates if they're black. Conley Monk Jr. said it powerfully. It has been some 50 years of waiting for some sort of justice and resolution for how the VA system treats black veterans. This decision not only excites and inspires me, but also brings hope to other veterans who have suffered. There's another group of veterans still fighting for justice, those discharged under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and earlier policies that ban LGBTQ+ service members. In 2023, veterans filed a class action lawsuit arguing that having a DD 214 that references sexuality forces a veteran to out themselves in any situation in which they might need to prove they are a veteran, such as on a job application. Having a less than honorable discharge cuts off access to some Department of Veterans Affairs benefits, including home loans, tuition assistance, and health care. Even though Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed in 2010, its discriminatory effects live on for the tens of thousands of service members who were discharged under this policy and its predecessors. Many were deprived access to the full benefits afforded to heterosexual veterans, including VA loan programs, college tuition assistance, health care, and hiring advantages in federal jobs. Cheryl Farrell, a Navy veteran and plaintiff in the lawsuit, explained, "Coming from a family with a long history of military service, I was beyond proud to enlist in 1985 to contribute to my country. But that pride was taken away by discriminatory policies that punished service members for who they loved." In January 2025, the government reached a settlement that would offer a streamlined process for veterans to get their discharge status upgraded or references to their sexuality removed from their paperwork. Lily Stephanides, another Navy veteran and plaintiff, said, "This settlement is not just about correcting records. It's about restoring the honor and pride that LGBTQ+ veterans have always deserved but were denied." So what do all these cases tell us? First, discrimination in federal agencies is real, documented, and ongoing. These aren't conspiracy theories. These are federal court cases with evidence, settlements, and policy changes. Second, the cost of discrimination is massive. Millions in settlements, policy overhauls, training requirements, and most importantly, the human cost of dignity stripped away from people who did nothing wrong. Third, change only happens when people fight back. Dr. Rajkumar could have stayed silent. Ray Jarar could have just covered his shirt and moved on. Dr. Singleton could have accepted the humiliating hair searches. But they didn't. They stood up, filed lawsuits, and forced accountability. Fourth, these systems won't fix themselves. The TSA had evidence in their own files that the SPOT program was scientifically invalid. They kept using it anyway. The VA has known for years that black veterans are denied benefits at higher rates. The problem continued. If you or someone you know experiences discrimination at an airport, document everything. Take photos, record videos if allowed, get witness information, and write down exactly what happened. File official complaints. The TSA has a civil rights complaint process. Use it. Organizations like the ACLU and Sikh Coalition have apps and tools to make filing complaints easier. Know your rights. You have constitutional protections against unreasonable searches and discrimination. Don't let anyone tell you that airport security means giving up your civil rights. Support organizations fighting for change. The ACLU, NYCLU, Sikh Coalition, and other civil rights groups are doing the legal work to hold these agencies accountable. These cases prove that accountability is possible. When Dr. Rajkumar was detained for 4 hours because air marshals didn't like the way he looked, he could have accepted it as the price of post 9/11 security. Instead, he fought back, and he won. The settlement changed TSA policies nationwide. When Ray Jara was told his Arabic t-shirt made him look like a robber, he could have stayed silent. Instead, he sued and won $240,000 while forcing the TSA and JetBlue to acknowledge they were wrong. When black women were routinely subjected to degrading hair pat-downs with no security justification, they could have endured it. Instead, they filed complaints and forced the TSA to implement new training and monitoring. These victories matter, not just for the individuals who won them, but for every person who travels through an airport, every veteran seeking benefits, every service member defending our country. Your voice matters in this fight. If you found this video valuable, hit that subscribe button. Share this with someone who needs to know their rights. Drop a comment telling me, have you or someone you know experienced discrimination while traveling? Your story could help someone else stand up for their rights. Remember, civil rights aren't abstract concepts. They're daily realities for people who just want to travel home, access their benefits, or serve their country without being treated as threats because of how they look. Justice was served in these cases, but the fight continues. Thank you for watching. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and never forget that your dignity and your rights are worth fighting for.